Thank you, Gianluca. And please join us for the most populous panel of the day. George, you too, please. And let me shortly and fastly try to introduce our guests in ABC order. László Drajkó, founder and managing partner at Drill Software Security, a true fighter to combat the root causes of cybersecurity incidents. László spent 25 years in senior management positions at leading global technology providers, and he's also a contributor of the American Council for Technology and Industry Advisory Council. Alessio Pecorario is a Vatican official and an expert in cybersecurity and new technologies. As a PhD in constitutional comparative law, he has over 15 years of experience developed in sensitive roles in international multilateral organizations, including the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the Council of Europe, and several Vatican institutions. Alessio, good to have you. We also have with us Imre Porkoláb of the National Security Office. He has an outstanding military career, starting in 1993, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. He spent much of his career creating and developing the special operations capability for the Hungarian Defense Forces, now with a leading role in defense innovation. He has served in the US as the NATO Allied Transformation Command representative to the Pentagon. In 2022, he was elected vice chairman of the board of the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. There you are. And we have with us Ferenc Vágújhegyi, who is a Hungarian government commissioner, the commissioner for the National Tax and Customs Administration, whose main research interests are somewhat unique for a person in his position. Ferenc is into electronic identification and authentication and blockchain technology in public administration. Oh my God, let us see now what your fast and condensed thoughts are on AI reshaping public services from the field of defense to that of taxation and others in your respective fields, and how it's reshaping societies. I turn to Alessio last, not because it's the least important, but maybe because it's the most important, because you have a high look at things, literally. So let's start maybe from the other side. Try it again. Maybe our team has just turned it on.
Okay, that is working.
Yes.
So maybe we share one. Okay, so our engagement at the Tax and Customs Authority with AI seems to be dull at the first catch, because we are using the old-fashioned AI tools like predicate calculus and deep learning methodology to tackle fraud evasion and financial crimes. But the result is very interesting, because we are revealing the background of the economic entities, the companies and other organizations, and we can leverage all the information from these behavior analysis methods.
When did you start applying these tools?
These are usually not off-the-shelf tools. We are developing, in behavior analysis we develop our methodology from the scratch, not from the scratch, from Python libraries, of course. These are very clever libraries, but ordinary risk assessment guys in our organization, of course, use off-the-shelf tools like SAS, for example, or Oracle business intelligence tools, or other tools as well.
It's going to be a large spectrum. Let's move from text to defense.
Let me, since I'm representing one of the oldest professions in here, you know, being the military, just start a little bit earlier and put things into context, and we can arrive to the tools and the tricks of the trade in the end. But I think that we humans have seen paradigm shifts before, and by paradigm shifts, I mean when we really have to rethink how we are actually approaching things. And if I'm really putting this into perspective, maybe about 2 million years ago, we started our evolution, and it took quite some time, because about 70,000 years ago we had a cognitive revolution. And by cognitive revolution, I mean that we really started to use the prefrontal cortex, which gave us abilities to talk about myth, to create religion, and actually to bring certain number of people into tribes and then start to fight each other, which hence the tradition of the military. Then agricultural revolution, then industrial revolution. I didn't want to eat up much time, but we have started to develop these tools which were more and more efficient. Then the IT revolution has started not a long time ago, and then we have AI that we are talking about. If we were to put this whole sort of evolution of humanity up until today into a yearly calendar, just imagine that up until, let's say, Christmas, we were in the first phase. So for 360 days, we were relatively in small tribes, not in hierarchies, living together with nature, and yes, fighting with each other, but in small numbers with smaller tribes, and people were more or less equal. So most of humanity has been designed into live in this environment. Then if we have one day, then the agricultural revolution comes, and then in less than 20 hours we arrive to the industrial, and then in the very end, it's only 4 minutes until we arrive in this calendar to the AI revolution. So my point in here is and this has been discussed by the panels before, it's us humans. It's not really technology, it's happening, but it's how we adapt to this technology and how we use this technology has been, the tricks of the trade for the military as well. And probably we can come back later on, how different companies are using artificial intelligence. But one thing is definitely different from the previous paradigm shifts, not just that we have significantly less time to adapt as humans and as militaries and as societies and as NATO in this case, but also that these tools have been serving us before, but now we have to ask the question, how we can create responsible AI, because, if you were inventing the press machine, you could distribute information. If you were inventing the radio, you could talk to a lot of people, but it didn't make decisions. It didn't enhance decisions. It didn't brainwash you, as we have heard in some cases. And it didn't actually invent things that we couldn't even understand. Like in AlphaGo, for example, Move 37, the very famous story, that, us humans were not even thinking about it throughout, many years. So I think those are the questions that needs to be considered when we are talking about responsible AI.
Your stories of the old times definitely bring us to teachings of the old times, still relevant today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, we have been asked to see how AI is challenging societal norms and public services. Hopefully, next year, if I would be lucky enough, invited again, we will discuss also how ethics and norms are changing AI. Because there is this fact that strikes me the most is the attention that the political, the economic, and the technological wars are giving to those actors, such as precisely religious voices, that approach the digital dilemmas of our society from an ethical standpoint. The first example that comes to my mind, for obvious reasons, is the historical participation of Pope Francis to the G7 last June in Puglia, Italy, the first time for a pontiff to attend this high-level intergovernmental meeting forum addressing precisely the AI ethics. I think this is very revealing, and fortunately is not limited to Catholicism. There is an urgent and authentic need to hear the voices of religions and philosophy, And this is for me very timing and needed, because precisely this is something completely new for humanity. The gravity of the digital transformation is unprecedented, and we need the typical approach of religions and philosophy that is holistic, that is inclusive, and pay attention to dimensions such as the social justice, the common good, for debating and finding solution to the challenge that modern technology and AI are posing to our times.
Pope Francis is a star rocking on so many levels of paradigm changes. Let's move on to security, which is, I think, a topic for everyone sitting here.
Hopefully that works. Yeah, thank you. Well, security is part of it, and I'd like to start with a little bit bigger picture. So, as a technologist, we study things that are scaring people anyway. One of these things are quantum mechanics. And I know everyone is a quantum mechanics scientist here, so you all know the Schrödinger cats thing. It's not a pet, it's a thought experiment, and it is very relevant to AI. Why? Because AI in our life in today is in a superposition. It's exciting and brings this bright future and deadly scaring at the same time. And the problem is not that. The problem is we are in the moment of opening the box. And we will figure out whether the cat is dead or alive. In this case, the cat is humanity. And this is pretty important for all of us. Now, I'm looking at the pessimistic side of it, and I have a long list, and I have a respect for the audience, so I'm not gonna read the long list. At the same time, I'm super excited to hear people like Maria when she talks about always the positive side, so that's very good. But what you see in the public space, and I would like to bring just one challenge down to earth here. We see the US is first to innovate. We see China is the first to deploy. And Europe is first to regulate. But in reality, you know, we will have 1 or 2 or 3 nation players that provide the back end for almost all the applications. And there is a chance that it gives humanity the final kick to work together, because you will run administrations of countries in a black box that we don't know how it works.
We can't open it.
Engineers, I would argue with Luca what he said, engineers have no idea how it works. They are not intentionally bad. The more you learn about AI, the less you know. And the less you can predict what it brings out. So it is all of our joint aim to see, to put humans in charge, or humans in charge in general. It's an excellent title of this. But I'm still wondering here, who are those humans? Is it government? Is it scientists? Is it tech companies? And it sounds like if we don't draw the biggest circle about humanity, we will not solve this problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an argument, but actually, as I say, I have a lot of friend engineers. No, but I mean, the issue is not exactly they're not doing on purpose. That's the problem. It's not that they're bad by design. The issue is that also we use this metaphor of the black box against what is, for instance, the use in the aviation, where instead is the other way around. You have a black box when there is a problem with the flight, is because, and then you can check and what went wrong. And in fact, in the previous panel, I think John mentioned the example of the International Energy Atomic Agency. Others were looking at the medical agency, others at the COP. I believe, and with other colleagues, we actually made the work for ENISA, exactly looking at the implication between AI and cybersecurity. And then we proposed that actually maybe we should look at the aviation, because they found more or less a way to prevent, or at least reduce the kind of incidents that are happening. Now, the OECD is trying to do something like that with the incident monitoring. Okay, some are my students, and I told them maybe they should do a bit more because it's not really working well for the moment. But that's maybe an area to go into. So that's maybe where we also have to look at how we manage the risk, and again, it's not an issue of one discipline against the other, but we're looking at this from a multidisciplinary perspective.
George?
For the sake of time.
You withdraw. Well, I don't know how to connect you all with what you just said. Are we still in time? We definitely not are on time. We have autonomous weapons as risks. We have data breaches. We have ethical questions. We have what you just said with black boxes. Are we still in time to have humans in charge in public services?
Can I just go back to superposition here and then bring in one specific example? So one company that I'm not sure if you're naming names here, but just now, it was Palantir. It's open story. So a couple of months ago, the CEO of Palantir, is on stage, actually showcasing the new AIP, which is especially developed for the defense sector. So imagine a program that automatically detects a target. It classifies it. It gives you options of. You as let's say a commander just have to pick one. Then it automatically creates all the orders, it sends it out to the relevant bodies, and then sort of executes. Humans are still in charge because you pick, one of the options, but just because we have the technology, and this technology is being tested in Ukraine, by the way, so it's not theoretical, but should we use it? And this brings us back, because, back to the story of Move 37. So those of you, I'm pretty sure that most of the people in this room, know the AlphaGo story better than I do, but just for the sake of those couple of people who don't. So actually the best, human player is playing against a machine which has just learned about Go, which is a very difficult game by any measure. And we humans, our creativity, our ingenuity, we can't be defeated surely in Go. It has happened in chess, but never in Go. So Move 37, going back, was a move that has never been seen before, because no human being would have thought of making that move. And actually that win was credited, after they analyzed the whole game, to that very unusual move. So then again, just think about it, and I won't be able to answer this question, but you have this Palantir program, it actually analyzes these things based on data that we have fed, which can be really skewed, let's put it that way, because the clarity of the data actually will sort of have a lot to do with the quality of the decisions that it will provide. But then it brings up, an ingenious solution that even Napoleon would never have thought about. Are you going to use this solution, not knowing, what it is, and not being able to comprehend, what this is based on, or should we live with it? It gives you a strategic advantage for sure, and I leave it at that.
That's brilliant, Imre, and just to write on top of this, so we have referenced agentic AI a little bit before, so that's the next wave, autonomous AI agents. Much of our attention now is focused on Gen AI and its implications, but there's something around the corner that's going to be a much more fundamental shift. Now, human in the loop, as Imre has referenced, is something that is becoming more and more mandatory in the upcoming regulatory wave. The reality of agentic AI technologies transforms it into something that is now called humans on the loop, which if you are transforming it into down-to-earth terminology, it's a race between us and our AI agents competing with the force and the speed and the restlessness that we are not prepared to deal with. And we are talking about our agents, not even, fighting against other people's AI agents. So this is something that I'm giving you as a consideration, that even if we have the right principles, even if we have the principles built into regulation, the technological reality and the proliferation of such technologies, because we will be talking myriads of agents in the pockets, can actually cause a very, very different reality from what was intended. And I don't want to, stay on very dark tones, but this was what was triggered. I'm sorry.
Maybe just something, because you were struggling on putting all the let's say, the different fields in perspective.
Thank you.
No, I think this goes across tax, fiscal, defense, cybersecurity, and even the holy Pope, because it's exactly what George said. On one side, and we discuss a lot, and we always discuss about the regulation. And so that's what I call the governance of artificial intelligence. Then we get excited because we are using these technologies, and we say we should use more, and that's the governance with artificial intelligence. And clearly their public sector is lagging behind, so we need to experiment, we need to do more of this kind of testing. Also, looking at the problems that we have, for instance, tax, or the cybersecurity or defense, you have a lot of problems because you are using some technologies with the discrimination or not really understanding what's happening. But still, then you can find some solution. Then there is what is happening now, especially with this new generation of AI, that is the governance by AI. When I wrote about this on a paper a few years ago, some colleagues were criticizing me, saying, what are you talking about? So, well, maybe it's not now, but it's coming. And indeed, the large language models is what we are witnessing now, that they do things without us necessarily pushing the button. Now, we have to ask ourselves whether the soldiers or the tax administrator or the cybersecurity manager, they actually can manage the systems or they can actually leave the systems go if they are in a controlled area, or taking the risk of doing something bad. That's where our ethical, let's say, consciousness should come in. Of course, if we manage to put these three things together, then we may have found the Holy Grail.
What's the time frame for that?
Well, yesterday.
Yesterday.
Time frame, about the time frame. So I think we are in a fast-paced race, because not just we are who analyze the economy, but the players of the economy analyze us as well, and we know it. And I think we have a time problem, because if we want to use a ship, maybe we should not drop the anchor first and then go. And I think there are three pillars of AI governance. The first one is the economy. Without the economy, there is nothing. For example, there is no revenue for the state. The second one is the skills of the government. In the previous session, panel session, we were talking about children's rights and protection and so on. So without government tools, the society is vulnerable. So it's important, and to tackle fraud as well. Sorry for that, but it's true. And the third one is the anchor. I mean the Ministry of Justice, and the lawyers protecting and guarding the members of the society. The AI Act is the anchor. The AI Act is representing in the Hungarian government the Ministry of Justice. They will always, their first reaction to any of my idea will be that no way, you can't do this. Do you want to analyze the behavior of the market or even human beings? And that's good, but we have to find a balance. So I fully accept it. Of course, I'm a member of the society as well. So I'm vowing the human right protection, but the boat cannot achieve its goals just with the anchor, and it's important. So now we have to look for the engine as well.
Can I just, because it's really hard to put time into perspective, and when I had my opening statement, let's just turn it around, and I have another, let's say, water-related story. So everyone knows Lake Balaton here, right? We have one bottle of water, and it's totally empty now, and I want to fill it up with water. That's the goal. So I'm putting in one bottle of water, and it doubles, every year. So up until, and let's say it's 1940, yes, and then the whole process starts. 2000, you still can't really see anything. Here and there, some remnants of water is there. 2010, some little really things appears, but no fish at all. 2020 is really when you really start to see the water, and by 24, it's totally full. So going back to the superposition is really need to figure out where we are right now in this process, because in the next 6 years we're going to see as much at least technology-related change as we have seen in the past 20 years, at least, or maybe more. So just think back, where we were 20 years ago, and that's going to happen to us in the next 5 to 6 years, and that is exponentiality. We humans are not sort of created like that. We think in a linear way, because that's how human evolution happens throughout millions of years. And that's why it's difficult to fathom. It's not really about how much time we have. Is how can we keep up with the speed of exponential change in here?
How can governments and regulatory bodies keep up with the exponentiality of what you have just described? Can they at all, even?
Yeah, my suggestion would be learning from the software industry. When we come out with regulation, just call it EU AI Act as 1.0, because it's not over, it's not done, and it's got two dimensions. One is implementation. It's already done but not implemented. And the second thing is, even if it's gonna get implemented, we already have to think about what is 2.0 or 5.6. I don't know the number. This landscape is changing so fast. So we are doing two things at the same time. We are innovating. We try to regulate that innovation, but putting that regulation down to the field is incredibly difficult, because the hardware on which we install that regulation is called human beings, and they are resistant to change. You don't have a reset button. And it is really a question how we change the way we learn.
With the reset button, I'd like to hand it over to Alessio.
Well, yes, I think that unfortunately, it's true that all the ingredients also that we can take from the Catholic approach, from a religious approach, in our case, we would speak about the integral human development of the people, of the individuals, take time, a lot of time and patience. Integral human development is a paradigm able to articulate the fundamental relationship of the person with oneself, with God, with the others, with the creation as a whole.
How will we change that to an exponential growth?
Yes, absolutely.
We won't.
The problem is that, I think also at the base of all these revolution and in the tech and the digital world that we are living is also this uncontrolled way and wrong way to express our desires. I was reading the other day precisely on a book that was about ethics and artificial intelligence, the comparison that Neil Postman made between 1994 from George Orwell and Aldous Huxley, Our Brave New World. And it was very fascinating because he was saying while Orwell feared the banning of books, Huxley feared that nobody was going to read a book anymore. Or when Orwell said, well, we are going to be deprived of information, Huxley said, no, we are going to have so many information that we don't know what to do with them. And again, Orwell was feared about being concealed, the truth be concealed. And again, for the same reason, Huxley was saying no, because the truth will be dispersed in a sea of irrelevance. And then he said, Orwell, we will going to become a captive society. And Huxley said, no, we are going to become a trivial society. So basically, to conclude, what Orwell feared was the fears that we could have, while Huxley feared the desires that we could have. And I think now we are in this moment where we feel the pressure of something that probably is beyond our control. But again, I think that what we have to do is, like John said beautifully before, take care of all the relational dimensions of the humans and of the earth, and have, let's say, a meaningful way to debate and understand each other, because this is a call that is for all the human beings. So again, as a slow and patient solution to something that is incredibly fast and dangerous, but this is what I would suggest.
What a point to raise on the complexity of fears and desires, Gianluca.
Can I say something? And also because we had a bit an argument with László. Now I fully agree with what he said. And also let me say that and congratulate Christine and George for managing all these panels. And you may not know, but these panels are done without pre-confessioned questions, no? Yeah. So in most conferences you have all this work done by someone behind the scene, the questions to be prepared and the answer agreed that, here is all on the spot. So,
well, George did a lot of work on that.
Yeah, but I mean, when we come here, we can be asked anything and we can say whatever we think. So what I want to say is that I fully agree with László, and I give you some insight from how the AI Act was actually taught, actually in 2018 or even before, and some colleagues of mine were asked, in fact, to even write, like for all the regulation, you have to prepare an ex-ante impact assessment. And of course, people say, okay, how can we do this? It's impossible. And then the idea was, we should do a regulation that is future-proof. So that means exactly the 1.0, 2.0 kind of versioning. Of course, this was maybe a bit lost in translation, but on the other side is exactly why this act then became so, let's say, relevant, because we are looking at technologies that we don't know how they evolve, but also we have to always remind ourselves that we are not trying to regulate the technology, because this would be impossible. We are trying to regulate the use of, the bad use of certain of these technologies that is actually sometimes already prohibited by other laws. So that's why there is this horizontal versus vertical approach. So it's complex, but it's something that we have to do, because otherwise we cannot embrace the future.
When you say we, again, as in the last panel, I always wonder who we are. Are we a team human, or are we not?
I've already spoken a lot, but I might...
On we, you just push the button here, and I have to... imagine, that we are talking about, U.S. versus China. It has been discussed before, other sort of things. But if this exponential sort of change is happening, then there might come a day, it can be 30 years, 3 years, whatever the time frame is, that it's going to be us humans, versus a super intelligence that's really hard to understand, and that battle is going to be in between them. But right now it's human-machine teaming, and the real topic that came to mind is trust, because we have discussed a very, very deep topic in here. But when you are talking about, I'm working in Diana in NATO. I'm working on the rapid adoption team, which is 14 countries, all the big NATO enterprises. They are all trying to sort of shorten the time period, so we get this technology into the hands of the warfighter in a relatively short amount of time, so we can enhance capabilities. What comes afterwards? I mean, the U.S. Navy has been really reluctant to actually incorporate ships that do not have sailors on it for quite some time. No, they are doing it, but it took some time. The Air Force, again, having a loyal wingman that is programmed to actually take a bullet for you, but is it going to do that, or is it going to make a different decision? You can't go and grab a cold one, with an AI and develop that trust that you're normally doing with your pilot colleague. So next to sort of time and adaptation, that would be the third thing when we are talking about we, is how we relate to another kind of intelligence that's not biological, that's silicon-based. And how do we develop that level of trust, because we have to coexist for the forthcoming years.
For the question, who do we refer as we, the popular answer is the humanity, of course. But in reality, the part of the people who has access to these tools. And it was mentioned in the previous session that it's not equal. I think it's much more equal than any previous technology in the world. You can buy a cheap equipment that fits to your palm, and you can access very useful tools. Just referring to ChatGPT.
But as Kay said, it's only as good as the data is. Yeah,
that's true. But and if you use it in English, then it does not matter if it's in Central Africa or in Hungary or in New York City. But of course it's not fully equal, but it's much more equal than access to the steam engine, for example, 200 years ago. And the bigger problem is that who possesses the technology, and that's extremely centralized, but extremely centralized. So we are doing core developments on, I don't refer as an AI tools, but deep learning tools. Let's call just deep learning tools, and it's a serious effort. And a serious commitment to achieve real advantage in your work. The tools now available for us is practically unreachable for most of the nations to possess. And that's why it is very good, it's a very good question to define who is the we.
Very good point raised. Thank you, George.
I'm slightly more optimistic than Ferry in the reachability of these technologies. So if you are watching the timeline between the coming out of closed, powerful models via their open source replicas, we are getting closer and closer to at least comparable performance between closed technologies and their open source alternatives. So I'm not that pessimistic going forward. But I wanted to say that, so for me, if we are taking that angle of AI in public services, which is one of my pet peeves, I still see it, and I keep seeing it for many years now, as a low-hanging fruit that is not really taken. This is something that large swaths of citizens would want. It would be something that citizens in general would enjoy and benefit from at an everyday level. It would create, societal happiness. It would create satisfied voters, and so on and so forth. And I believe that the data is there, and the data could be there. That is not a major barrier. The technology, in my humble views, is there. Of course, some of it needs work, some of it is closed, some of it is open source. And the use cases are there, but they are not scaling. The problem is that, and I think that's a specific problem in Europe and the funding system that we are a part of, is that it's not built for replication. This is why I like, initiatives like Gianluca's, because for a long time the barrier was understanding inside public service what AI is capable of. And you needed the first champions and the first instigators who are able to explain what we can do. So I think that most of these components are getting better. What I think is replicability and scalability, and just to borrow one of Imre's work, which is also applicable to a smaller extent to public service in general, than not just defense, rapid adoption, rapid acquisition cycles.
Just because, I cannot but agree with George, but also another insight that what you say today was not obvious a few years ago. Yeah. Actually, in 2018, when we were setting up the AI Watch, the observatory of the EU on AI, in fact, I was one of the few advocating for, well, we should look at AI in public sector. I said, nah, this is not important, that will come, etc. And then we managed to convince them to do something, and maybe tomorrow in the workshop who is there, I will give you some more of the data and what we have done. And finally, in 2020, there was in the white paper on AI some reference to a program called AI Adopt that was exactly supposed to provide this kind of push for the public sector to adopt AI and also especially innovating the public procurement. That is the key issue here. I think I'm sure it was because it was 15th of August 2020. It was my last work for the Commission. I was revising the draft, the terms of reference. That program was disappeared for some reason. Now, fortunately, in the new Commission, von der Leyen announced in her political guidelines that will launch a big project, a big program on AI Apply that is exactly doing this. So but we have to prove the importance of this, because otherwise it was not so obvious. Now, of course, if we want to be really future-proof and then not just, let's say, be rhetorical, then we have to make this happen. So we really have to accelerate this. We have to test in the public sector, in Europe and beyond. And that's where, in fact, I'm just back from Africa, and there are other problems that we need to address, like the digital infrastructure, and we really need to have all voices heard. That's why I was concluding my presentation with the need to make the next World Summit of Information Society right. Otherwise, we'll go again into increasing the digital divides that we have actually shrinking in the last 20 years instead of reducing.
On that clear note, with a call to action, let me hand it over to the audience, because we'll have to conclude soon, for questions and comments from you. There's a gentleman on the other side of the room. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a question about biases, because I think this will be more suitable for the previous panel, because that's who they mentioned the topic about asking ChatGPT about certain historical events in different languages and getting different results. And they were talking about these as certain biases. So I'm kind of thinking about it in a different sense, because those were not necessarily biases, but they're just natural consequences of having different nations with different histories, and they were on the other sides of certain conflicts, right? So a certain conflict is not going to be seen as favorable for one nation in one language, but it will be seen as favorable in another one. So, but when we're talking about large language models, these can still be seen as biases. So who is responsible for deciding what a bias is, and who is responsible for fixing that bias, and how are they going to decide which side wins, or how do you account for that?
It's a hard one.
So when we are talking about the bias of the AI solutions, we could refer 15 or 20 years back from the dawn of AI, in the advanced statistical methods. There is the numerators, the book named Numerators, in 2008 maybe, or or the weapons of mass distractions. It's nearly 10 years old as well. So it's not a new problem. It's not about the not just raised up with the generative AI, but we knew it before. And for example, at the caves of the public burdens, the taxation, the human intelligence can solve the issue. If we see look at a risk assessment category that initiate actions from the tax authority in Budapest or in Western Hungary, we will not do the same in the northeast part of the country. In the northeast part of the country, we try to help to abide, have to satisfy the legal requirements of accounting or managing a company. And if we do not do it, then we simply can destroy the community of small towns or villages. And, and I'm sure that first of all we have to interpret the language of the result of those AI algorithms. And that's the key now. But as Christina said, the changes are exponential. And if it's true, then we have to justify it every time.
So this is a very hard question if you go back, because what you asked is, who's responsible for, let's say, between different languages and cultures? If we live today in Hungary, and if you speak English, your potential library of accessible knowledge is 100 times more than if you don't speak English but only Hungarian. And that bias is inherent from the system, right? When you look at the EU AI Act, it only tells that there are 4 layers of different risks. So there is this minimal layer that we don't care. What YouTube offers you as a next video, no one really cares. Although I'm not sure if it's minimal. And there is this top layer. We don't know what we know what we don't want to see in the European Union. Now, when it gets to the high risk, how do you manage bias? There is a theoretical response for that from the Act. And what we are asking here is take this theoretical response down to the street. What is happening in the street, and I'm going to be very graphic on that. If you used an LPG cylinder, an LPG container, and you connect it to the oven, people are told how to test it. You put like a soap bubble onto this, but that's not what the people do. They set on a light on a match and they put next to it. And this is happening in AI today. That we just roll it out and it blows up, then we will learn.
That's promising. Let's finish this conference on a different note. One last question. There's one. Who was it, John?
Thanks. Really short one, if I may.
Sorry, I didn't see you. Of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Imre had a very good note on, or comment on the exponential growth of this technology. I believe every technology's diffusion, from the corn production, the printing press to ATMs, had this exponentiality. The interesting thing is how shrink data can be, how short in time from 0 to 100% it can be. And I believe this evolvement of the tempo of the technology comes from the way we learned how we adopt as humans technology, how we start to use it. And if you look at the product development teams of the big techs, they all have psychologists, they all have sociologists inside. And I could talk long, but the short question is, shouldn't we employ the psychologist and the sociologist in the board who decides on if it's high-risk application or low-risk application?
Well, my frank answer to you is that this is something that has been done in Silicon Valley for 6, 7 years already, maybe a little more, even without any regulation in place. So AI development teams became inherently multidisciplinary. And if you look at the AI scientists, a lot of the AI scientists, leading AI scientists, have like 2 or 3 PhDs, and only one of them is computer science or neuroscience. So I would say, and I mean, I would even turn it around, that with the mandates coming out of the AI Act and the upcoming wave of regulation and standardization, this kind of multidisciplinarity will be of the essence. This is not just teams working together or cross-functional teams. This level of like multi-skill sets, so like to have data skills, business skills, compliance, legal, risk skills in one person, that's going to be the winner of the next stage. I really believe so.
Imre?
Can I just, because yeah, I have a favorite story that I normally share, and it comes from Astro Teller, who is the grandson of Edward Teller, so really good genes in here. He's leading Google X now, so has another great job. And what Astro said is about 100 years ago, for us humans, it took about 25 years to adapt to a new technology. Now we have improved in a linear fashion, so it takes about 10 years now. They you know, learned it from these you know, smartphone devices. And the exponential nature is that, you know, why, you know, it was about 25 years, it took much more time for a technology to scale and spread, but right now, because of the exponential nature, you know, the disruption cycles are around 5 years now, and then it's halving. So what Astro says is that we are already behind the curve, because, you know, if it's 5 years for a disruption cycle and 10 years to get used to technology, he says the only way that we can close this gap and not sort of increase it is if we completely reimagine the way we learn, individually and as organizations. So we come back to the education portfolio that was discussed before in this panel. And there are, you know, great achievements in the intersection of biotechnology and IT, but I don't even want to go there because that's a different conference. But I'm really hopeful that we as humans will be able to actually close that gap in the future.
And you wanted to close with remarks on?
No, I mean, actually, close very well with the we. The answer to your question is we as humans, but still taking advantage of the potential of this technology. So I think, and I would not argue with the National Security Office. I agree with him by default that actually the good thing of this technology, but also the big danger, is that they are changing our cognitive function. Be it in a war or in education or anywhere in society and in the public sector as well. But if we manage instead to use that to improve our cognitive capacity, our cognitive function, and let humans do something better than, for instance, working. Why should we work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day? We can do something else while the technology is working for us. But then we should, of course, make sure that this is everywhere in the world, and we as humans can win, let's say, the battle against the machine.
Now you're opening again another window that's for a full day on what we do when we feel insignificant, or what we do with our time that's offering new opportunities for us. George always warns me against it, but I am an Eliezer Yudkowsky fan, and even then, I am happy to finish on an optimistic note, as opposed to Yudkowsky would do. Thank you very much for your insight, and thank you very much for the roundtable and for the very, very diverse perspectives of all the guests here today.